Okay, can we start? Good morning, bonjour, bonjour à tout le monde. I'm Lucia Bruesgan. I'm the chairwoman of the International Biochar Initiative, and I'm happy to be here today with you. Thank you for joining this session on carbon removal in Africa, standards, traceability, and market integrity. Before we dive into details, I want us to pause for a moment and think about the context. It's easy to fall into generalization talking about Africa. But Africa is not a single country or a single landscape. It's a continent. It's a continent of 54 countries, more nations, and more languages, spanning dense tropical forests, savannas, deserts, wetlands, and large-scale agriculture, agroforestry, as well as industrialized cities and mining regions. Economically, some regions are booming, while others face extreme poverty. The poorest countries in the world are in sub-Saharan Africa. Governance, infrastructure, and market maturity differ widely. This diversity matters when we talk about biochar and carbon removal. What works in one context may fail in another one. As we explore standards, traceability, and market integrity today, I want to challenge us all to think beyond assumptions and focus on solutions that are adaptable, credible, and grounded in the ground. Because this diversity shows up in the way biochar is produced and deployed. We know biochar is much more than a product, it's a system. And in some regions, we see artisanal, small-scale approaches using local kilns and feedstocks, delivering both soil and climate benefits, but facing challenges in traceability and financing. In others, we see industrial or semi-industrial models with higher throughput, tighter quality control, and easier integration with carbon markets, but often with higher capital requirements, more intense logistic, and less direct engagement of local communities. Neither approach is intrinsically better, but they raise different questions and challenges for standards, traceabilities, financing, and market integrity. To help us navigate these challenges today, I'm delighted to welcome our three panelists. Julien Jacob, Head of Offtakes and Investment Solutions at Puro.earth. Mathias Sellam from Crystalchain, enabling transparency and trust. Kubilay, Chief Strategic Alliances Officer at CSI. And we will have online connected from Uganda, Simeon Max and Innocent Owomugangi from Solidaridad, sharing with us experiences and stories on real-life conditions of biochar projects. So thank you for joining this session today. I start addressing our colleague from Puro. From an investor's and buyer's perspective, what currently blocks capital from flowing faster into African projects?
Hello. Hi, Lucia. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I'll answer the question maybe in two parts. First, speaking about buyers and then investors. Logics are similar, but it's good to spend a bit of time on both separately. So buyers for biochar credits, the number of corporates basically that have started buying biochar credits over the last few years is enormous. So I work at Puro.earth, we're I think the leading standard and registry for biochar. We have certified something like 500,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. And we have seen over 450 different companies buying or biochar credits, retiring actually, or biochar credits. Through that whole pool of buyers, there is very different logics that apply. A few years ago, it was so that people were buying a lot on the spot market, meaning projects would produce biochar, get certified, get credits, and then push a commercialization exercise, which was about convincing the buyers of the intrinsic qualities of the credits that they've already obtained. For buyers, this was quite impractical because it means that you're a bit working last minute onto what's available, and also you don't really have an opportunity to lock for the future what you will need to make your environmental claims. So away from the spot type of market, we've seen a offtake market emerge. Offtake is just basically a contract for the future delivery of credits. And then other prerogatives or other things come into play when you start thinking about offtake as a buyer. When you're thinking about offtake as a buyer, you want predictability. Because the worst thing that can happen to you is you put money up front, or even you sign a contract because you think you're going to get credits in the future, and then they never come. And that has been something really difficult. Buyers know that this happens, so it's not like they will sue you, but they do want to know more and more that there is predictability in their contract. And so to the question of what could unlock more demand with those buyers that are interested in biochar, I think predictability is very important. Being able to convince a buyer that what you put in your contract is actually going to be delivered. This is probably something that will smoothen out in the next few years as machines get more standardized, as machines to feedstock fit are a bit more demonstrated. But as of today, I feel like buyers go to the big biochar projects for purchases, whether it is offtakes or spots, because they know that they work before they will actually, and they will exhaust those streams of credits before they go on to the next ones. And this is because of a perceived risk of under-delivery. To the investment side, I think here maybe there's two different categories of investors that are good to segregate. The ones that are a bit institutional, they invest over a number of things, not just biochar, and for a project to be accepted internally for investment, they have a tick-the-box exercise. They need to have long-term purchase signed in a fixed price contract. They need to have a certain debt service covering ratio, or the standard things that their credit committee oftentimes, because they're banks, will ask them. And when you're into that tick-the-box exercise, you will, oftentimes the blocking points will be track record, so demonstration of a feedstock and a machine working at scale, and the lack of bankable offtake. And a bankable offtake is effectively telling the investor that if you manage to produce your credits, then someone will buy them at a price that is pre-agreed, and there is little risk that those credits will just stay on your hands. And then when it comes to the second type of investors, so less tick the box but more ad hoc due diligence, those would be the less institutional ones, maybe the more opportunistic ones. Think about traders, like trading companies. Think about equity funds, early stage equity funds, even family offices. Those will really look into the unit economics. And this is what today is blocking, I think, a lot of capital flowing. It is the capability to prove the unit economics of a project to those opportunistic investors. Proving the unit economics means that you would have demonstrated that you have costs in your contract, and you have costs in your biomass, and you have revenue against it, and that this is something that you've been able to lock in the future to demonstrate that there is enough margin essentially to pay the investment.
Wow, it gets complicated. Kubi, and from your angle, from your perspective, I'm sure that at CSI you have seen some examples that you want to share with us.
Sure, thank you so much. We are a Swiss-based standard. By the way, our booth is over there. My colleagues are watching here. So I fully agree with what Julien told top-down. So when I look at Africa, last year was the World Climate Summit in Ethiopia. I took part and I saw there is a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of motivation to change things. And the clear message of the climate summit was transitioning Africa from receiving aid to self-sustaining, to a self-sustaining continent. And I think the rules that apply to companies in general apply. So if I look at it in a pragmatic way, Julien said it in a very clear framework way, and I try to make it more simple where I say, adding to what Julien said, because I fully agree, a standard requires setup of a company and owning land. So now the problem already starts here. When I have, like Lucia said, many countries, 54, 1.5 billion people, and you want to set up a company and buy land. Not so easy. It's not like in the United States or in Germany to buy land and ownership. So Uganda, for example, does not allow it. You can only have leasehold, not freehold. Now we as a standard provider adapt to that. So we say, okay, instead of owning it, leasehold of maybe 30, 40 years should be fine. Next rule is capital requires security and efficiency. So legally, when you want to set up a company, when people put already hurdles in front of you, as an investor, that's scary. It's like take the money and you will not see it again. So that's not good. You should make it easy. For climate purposes, I recommend to make it easy to set up the company, no local director required, cost $500. Start today, tomorrow you're active. That would be a dream come true, but that we are very far from that. So it's a continent, not a country. So
it's a continent,
needs to be aligned.
Thank you so much, Kubi. I'm sure that Mathias also agrees on this fact that being on the ground makes a difference.
Yeah, I haven't worked so much on the financing part, but yeah, I totally agree with a few things I've seen on those topics.
Yeah, and then we understand how it's so difficult and struggling for projects that may work well at pilot scale, but they are in difficulties to scaling, to become bigger. So what distinguishes the project that successfully move from demonstration to portfolio grade? Julien, can you articulate something?
Yes. So I think it's what makes a project bankable in a way. What is required there is quite standard across any project in the world. It is certainty through contracts and plan Bs if those contracts don't work. Putting it in the context of biochar, it means that you know that your biomass works with your machine now, and you know that you're going to be able to get that biomass to the premises of your plant over a period of time that is sufficient to, at minimum, repay your loan or repay what you owe to the investors, ideally a bit more than that. You also want to know that if that doesn't work, you have a plan B. If that biomass source is suddenly not working anymore for any reasons, because, I don't know, it could be contaminated, it could clog your machines, it could, a lot of things could happen, then you have a plan B. So you don't want, to have a single risk like biomass sourcing put in jeopardy your entire project. The other contracts that you need to have in place is, you've purchased the machinery and it works, but then you're not quite sure at this point if it's going to work for 2 years or 10. And it's always important there to think about spare parts. It's always important there to think about what happens if something happens with the machine. How expensive are they going to be to replace eventually? So this is also, something to really think through contractually from going to demo plants to large scale. And then what becomes of the biochar? is also something you need to think through, because as a pilot you will have maybe tried a few ways of dispatching biochar and different uses, but ultimately what an investor or a buyer will want to ensure is that you have contractually already agreed to dispatch this biochar to end users that are going to be there for the long run. Small edit on that, by the way. Puro, for example, doesn't force you to get money for the biochar, especially recognizing in Africa that the market may simply not be there, and we need to kind of produce biochar and give it away to farmers or cooperatives so that they can try it. And eventually, in a few years, if that makes sense and they see economics from using less fertilizer or higher yield, it can turn into a P&L making item. But for the time being, you can, what's important for us there is that you know what you're going to do with the biochar, you know how it's going to be used, by whom, how it's going to be dispatched, but not so much whether you're going to make money from it. This is not so much our concern. So contracting, basically at all levels, thinking of every risk you can have and put them in contracts is really what is important there.
Thank you, Julien. I think it's very wise also having a plan B. And Mathias, maybe you have other suggestions to add to this.
Yeah, to go back to what you were saying, one important thing and what we've seen on the project we've been working with is that planning is really important from the start for feedstock sourcing, because changing feedstock is hard, it's a lengthy process, it's costly, and you don't want to go too far away to get your feedstock sourcing. One other element that I find interesting in some projects we've accompanied is that, like, by design, some projects are not made to scale. Because some projects, especially in Africa, are sometimes really well implanted in their own community. And the biggest opportunity for those project developers in those situations is more to multiply the project on other places, on other geographical areas, instead of trying to scale and raise the volume of feedstock and biochar produced.
Yeah, I think that moves to this point. I mean, Africa is normally considered a kind of paradise for biochar producers because it's presented having structural advantages. I mean, there's a race for biomass maybe or something like that, I don't know. But in your experience, which of these advantages are real and which are oversimplified or misunderstood?
Well, at Crystalchain, we've been accompanying projects from their feasibility study to their CORCS issuance for some time already. And there are actually some structural advantages, but I would say most of them should be taken with some kind of nuance. The first one would be feedstock availability. Basically, what we find is that you have a lot of agricultural waste available, contrary to what we can find in Europe, where agricultural waste already have an end-of-life planned. So basically, biochar project can be used sometimes just as a way of a waste management project, which in itself makes it high value from the start. Secondly, is clearly a capex and opex point of view for the operation. So it's cheaper to install a facility, to buy land. The cost of labor, the overall cost of operation is lower. However, there are some nuance to bring to that point too. Some issues we encounter with machinery due to the weather. You have a higher cost of maintenance, a higher cost of setting up machinery. It's harder sometimes to create a revenue stream from biochar. As Julien mentioned, biochar is often given for free to communities. And one last thing is overall infrastructure, lack of infrastructure sometimes you can find. It's hard to sell byproduct, heat, electricity from your biochar production. Roads, a lack of roads or poor condition of road make it sometimes difficult for your overall supply chain to work properly. And so this is an important point. One thing that for me, from our point of view, is mostly a misconception is smaller regulation, easier permitting. What we encounter is we are often dealing with lengthy official processes with a high risk of corruption. For instance, a few months ago, we were working with a project. They were waiting for the delivery of the machinery, and it was blocked at the port in Gabon, and we had to pay. The project had to pay off someone unofficially to get the machine go through the customs. And one last point, which is really important from our point of view, is that there is an actually big growing market for biochar in Africa, because contrary to what we can have in Europe, there are a lot of depleted, sandy soil. So biochar can actually bring high value to help improve the quality of soil. So this is really important for environmental and sustainable development of biochar. And it also helps adding and helping construction projects in Africa. So yeah, most of those topics should be taken with a point of nuance, but there are great advantages. But to take advantage of those, we need great planning.
Thank you so much. I can echo what you're talking about. I know exactly how biochar can work, especially in poor depleted soil in rural Africa. But in those contexts, people are so poor that they cannot afford to buy it. So that's why it's important to acknowledge the need for them to use it. So let's be sure that they use it, but without necessarily have a market around that. So that's where Solidaridad is welcome. I think you have a lot of experiences. Simon, I see you online, you're connected. Hi, welcome to our panel. I think you want to tell some stories, real stories happening right now on biochar producing and application in Uganda, if I'm not wrong. Welcome, Simon. It's up to you now.
Yes, thank you very much for the warm welcome and introduction. Good morning, everybody in Nantes and online. My name is Simeon. I represent Solidaridad Network, and I'm here with my colleague Innocent Ovumahungi from Uganda. Solidaridad operates in over 40 countries around the world and across 8 supply chains, strengthening agricultural systems to so smallholder farmers can increase their income, build climate resilience, and participate in sustainable global value chains. So we're working on this implementation side, but then also engaged in advocacy, supporting corporates in their purchasing and sustainability strategies. Among our climate finance portfolio, we implement agroforestry projects and are trialing biochar in various countries and various contexts to find what works and what doesn't. And I think we're engaged in a particularly special challenge because by working with smallholder farmers, we have hundreds or thousands of stakeholders involved, and that makes it complex. So we're learning a lot as we go through the piloting phase, a lot of investment in R&D. And so we're actively looking for support to refine our approach. To contribute to the question about the structural advantages, I think most of the ones I had on my list have already been mentioned. The available and unused biomass, and by transforming the farm residues into biochar, we also reduce the emissions on farm, the degraded soils that need amendments. 3, the pressure to transformation because of the high fertilizer costs and related fertilizer emissions. Another one that hasn't been mentioned before is the cooperative networks. That makes it easier for aggregation and streamlining the solutions. And then obviously the potential for additional carbon income beyond the agronomic benefits of biochar. So we are building and testing pilots in several countries, connecting to carbon finance, working on scalable business models for our NGO, but then also for the farmers with various digital monitoring tools. Now, to make everything more tangible, I would like to hand over to my colleague Innocent to bring a bit of life to all of that from Uganda. Can I share my... Yes.
I ask the support of the technicians if they kindly...
Let's see if that works. Can you see this? Can you see the slides?
Yes. Yes,
Okay,
yes,
over to
everything
you.
is running smoothly.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, colleagues, Simeon, members attending this session of engagement. My name is Innocent Omanj. I'm a Solidaridad staff. I work in Central and Eastern Central Africa, based in Uganda. I'm the southern part of Uganda. I'm happy to present our initiatives in Biochar in Solidaridad. Simeon, you can go to slide 2 and 3. We've been able to engage in trainings on DMRV that enhances quality biochar that meets the CISI. And this is our farmers and our staff doing training. You can go next. As field staff, we've been able to enhance training to the farm level, because we have boots and brains on the ground to ensure that farmers source biomass from the right sources, not to encroach on other areas that are restricted. And this is being encouraged by our staff. As you see, I'm there with Charity, one of our staff in the country. You can go to the next slide. Everybody knows that biochar has a benefit to our farmers, and this has been evidenced by farmers who have been able to apply this biochar. It has a good retention. It has reduced on synthetic use of our fertilizers. It improves soils, and of course, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions. This is kindly that these have been identified by different authors. But I want to concentrate on the real advantages that have been enhanced or that have been achieved by our farmers that we work with in one of our projects called Harvesting Carbon Project. One, we've been able to roll out the DMRV to cover almost 1,000 farmers, while enabling them to produce biochar that is traceable for carbon accounting. As my colleagues also said, as our farmers, the smallholder farmers structured in cooperatives, they are able to source biomass and the wastes convert to biochar. So there is no way how you will say that farmers don't have biomass to produce biochar. That is one of the second advantage that we have in this carbon initiative. The third point is about farmers have reported a reduced use of inorganic fertilizers because of support from the biochar. Because biochar is mixed with organic fertilizers, cow dung, goat dung, that enhances soil health within the coffee farms and other plantations within our region. But nevertheless, we have some challenges as we do our work. One is about expensive technologies. For example, acquiring and operating the DRMV, the upfront costs involved in sourcing the kilns, the metal kilns that we normally use to enhance quality biochar. But also in our trainings, we have been able to train farmers to use the quantities to lower down the costs of producing biochar. Secondly, there is still some need to upscale biochar production or initiative within all our projects across East and Central Africa. Currently, we have our biochar projects in Uganda, Tanzania, and Zambia, and part of Ethiopia they are starting. So we think it is good for us to enroll every farmer within our project on a biochar initiative because of its replica effect. The success story that farmers have reported is that you can see, this is one of our farmers, you can see his coffee. The response that biochar has been able to create probably on the leaves or the physical structures of the coffee and the soil. So biochar itself has been a game changer into our exhausted soils because of previous poor farming methods that were not in cognizant with the CSA principles. So I want to assure listeners and participants that biochar is a real product, a real amendment, and a real savior to our farming communities in East and Central Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Innocent. Very interesting, your example that you, and the story, the real life story that you take. So I think you are suggesting that the first driver for biochar uptake in rural communities is biochar application to the soil. So because here sometimes we have the perception that biochar is a very important tool to decarbonize, to generate environmental benefits because it sequesters carbon, which is true, absolutely. But it is not the starting point. So Africa is telling us, hey guys, pay attention to this because the first and starting point is the soil, is biochar applied to the soil. And if I can also add another piece, which is part of my personal experience. As you have seen in the pictures, when we think about the soils and the crops in Africa, they have normally a multi-cropping system where they grow different crops all together, meaning they have coffee, and in the pictures they have banana together with coffee, but I'm sure they have other crops growing all together, cassava or many other things down there. So it's a kind of challenging on the feedstock side, correct? What would you suggest? I mean, seasonality, for instance. We know that to be able to go to an industrial plant, we need to have kind of homogeneous stuff that goes inside the machine, and that could be a challenge. Can you articulate a little bit more on that?
Thank you very much. As we participate in this biochar production, it has two sides that in terms of level of management, where I can say, as local farmers, you are able to produce this biochar on a small scale on your farm using the pit contiguous, where you dig a pit, you have your farm wastes, you burn them under pyrolysis system, under controlled system as we've trained farmers. You are able to transfer this biochar to your farm for enhancement of soil health. Whereas use of contiguous and other huge machines, basically they play multiple purposes. One, for soil health and carbon credits, because you must ensure that you have high quality biochar that meets with the standard. In this case, I want to say that in our farming communities, we have a lot of intercrops, as you mentioned, it is true. But this biochar that you apply, probably you apply it once in 3 years, but it has an effect, an quick effect on all the crops, on the spectrum of crops, in the sense that normally in our soils, farmers have a tendency of reduced water structures, meaning that whenever you apply fertilizers, 40% of the fertilizers are taken away or they are washed away by runoff. So this biochar comes in to hold them together, to reduce the runoff, to ensure that the roots of these annual crops, coffee, perennial crops are able to benefit, and you have improved yield in this case. So whether you are a small farmer or big farmer or at a higher level of modernization or at a local level, you are able to benefit from this biochar production at each stage of production or each stage of use and application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking us traveling virtually, at least, in Uganda. It was very interesting and inspiring. And let's come back here to the panelist. Kubi, this is for you. What single decision by standard bodies, buyers, government, or developers, project developers, would most accelerate responsible scaling? We have seen they are using clearly an artisanal approach, moving from digging holes and producing biochar, which is the ancient way they did it. But of course, this is not a way to demonstrate, to prove that we are sequestering carbon while we are doing that. So they are kind of moving from that. So what would be a single decision that you see as useful?
Good question. Let me reframe the whole context a little bit. When you look at Africa, okay, no, I start different. We have issued so far 600,000 credits worldwide. We are the largest soil-based issuer so far. In the next 12 weeks, we will add another 500,000 credits to that. So it will be this highly accelerated, and it comes from Africa. So let me put into perspective one thing. Uganda is a very good example. We are dealing with a dozen of countries for mutual recognition agreements. Some of them are easy to deal with, and some are putting hurdles, like I said in the beginning. So my idea to that question would be align the climate policies faster and do not put artificial impediments into the process. For example, local elections, yeah, the guys decided to stop the application. Okay, good. What do we do now? We were there twice. Go again, wait for election. What we do now? Okay, but that's going on somehow. And the second thing is, when I look at Africa, our registry has 37% of all projects are Africa-based, and almost the same amount is India-based. But, there is a but. In Africa, the artisan clearly dominates, whereas India is advancing in industrial pyrolysis also. So when you look at the structure of pyrolysis, if it's artisan, that's more early stage. In the end, to summarize, a buyer from Europe or United States or wherever doesn't actually care where the credit comes from. So let's get closer to each other and find a way to align policies. That would be the first and utmost important thing. And let's motivate the climate polluters to purchase the credits that are already certified, issued by trusted standards. So trust is actually the most important, and aligning policies. That would be the short answer.
Thank you. Matthias, maybe you have...
Yeah, I actually have we have a view at Crystalchain, because we've been accompanying a lot of projects, and depending on the country we start, like everything, we start from scratch. So from our point of view, a good decision would be to start building a regional cooperation around biochar, to put together industrial actors, agricultural actors, to start working together and not see themselves as competition. So everyone can help each other with knowledge, with insights on how to set up installation, with what works well, and what doesn't work. And so this would greatly help, from our point of view, a quicker initialization of new projects for biochar, and it would probably help a lot with investment and cash flowing into those projects.
Thank you. Stay there for a moment, please. Let's focus on trust. And we know that traceability is a key aspect of trust, of building trust. So what parts of the biochar value chain are still hardest to measure, verify, or digitalize? And can you share one example on that?
Yeah, thank you. At Crystalchain, we've been working on traceability for 9 years, working on the DMRV for like 3 years, something like that. And when we consider traceability issue and difficulties we encounter in a biochar project, It boils down to mainly two factors. And this is applied to Africa, but also to other projects we've had around the world. The first one boils down to the human factor. We are, and especially with partners, feedstock partners, final use partners, because project developers, they know what they have to do. They know the DMRV, they know how to work around it. So this, on this side, is fine, but mostly with human factors, with the partners. One example is that, especially in Africa, projects are usually working with a high number of partners. So a lot of small, local agricultural fields with a lot of deliveries. And to have a good quality traceability, you need to track every event. So one issue we've encountered with one project is having a delivery slip with each delivery, and with each event we need to track. This is one issue regarding the human factor. A second one would be also about knowledge and education of people. Because a good example is, do people really understand what they do when they sign off the carbon removal rights when when projects are giving them biochar? Second point would be digitalization and access to the internet. A lot of projects are working on the ground in remote areas. They don't have access to computers. They don't have especially a good internet coverage. So what is important to have to allow good traceability, because good traceability if you are working in real-time traceability, the better data you will get. So what is important is to have mobile solution for people to allow them to track data in real time through their mobile app, and internet coverage. When you don't have it, you need offline solution. Data will be then uploaded at a later time on your DMRV, but you need to be able to track and load data even if you don't have an internet connection. And those are our hot topics we are working on at Crystalchain, because we know it's really important, especially for African projects.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a key aspect. I mean, Africa is challenges. We know that Paul Stewart is organizing an event in South Africa. South Africa, I always say, I was challenging one of my former board members, because he was claiming that South Africa is Africa, and I say, no, South Africa is not Africa. No, of course, I was joking at that time, but I think South Africa has many more landscape than the other African countries. So carbon removal markets are under scrutiny. And what are the important key features, non-negotiable today for a biochar carbon credit to be considered high integrity? Kubi.
Last week I was in Canada speaking to buyers of carbon credits, namely, I can tell the names, it's Bain, McKinsey, Microsoft, Amazon, and their workshop was for due diligence. I asked, guys, why are you making a due diligence when the standards already checked everything? It's like I'm sitting on a chair that has a CE stamp on it, and I trust it. I don't need to go to TÜV and say, I want to check it myself again. So in my opinion, we lose a lot of time when you have trusted standards like Puro, isometric. There are just, it's an oligopolistic structure. The trust is there. You don't need to double check and check again. So that's first of all one thing, that you trust what we are doing. I'm sure Bain or McKinsey or anybody will not check soil organic carbon. They will not check the biodiversity and measure these things. So they basically just are gatekeepers to say financially, is it good for me or not? Anyway, you understand that it's very concentrated also, the buyers. You don't have 150,000 buyers. It's just 9 or so that are dominating the voluntary carbon market. So it's a lobby. We are small, but it's very important what we do today, because when we can prove trust, the scrutiny will disappear itself. So in my opinion, we are going the right way, but still a little bit too, so I'm a little bit impatient when I speak to them, a little bit more impulsive and asking maybe sometimes provocative questions, but we check it. You don't need double check again. No worries, we do our thing. We are 30 years old. We come from soil. So
That's interesting. I think, Matthias, you can mention also and
Yeah,
echo what could
Yeah,
be.
exactly. Because what we've seen already with some carbon credit buyers is that, like Microsoft, they try to set up higher standards, and whether or not it brings actual value to the project, I'm not sure. Carbon standard, whether it's CSI or Puro.earth, are really strict, and they are getting stricter with each iteration. What is important to ensure a good quality and high integrity of carbon credits is a good traceability and the possibility and the capacity of projects to prove everything you are claiming to do on your project. And that's why DMRV is really important for those projects, because it helps you gather everything you need to have and to help a proper reporting and to be able to go with the improvement and the stricter the methodology are going to get, the higher integrity your carbon credits will be able to be.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to this because I think it's really important to distinguish between forward purchases, offtakes, and spot purchases. If people buying spot, so something that's already been verified by a standard, is purchased in a way where they're doing the whole work again, I agree, it's counterproductive, and I think people are moving away from doing that anyway. End buyers rely maybe on intermediaries on that, but I don't think end buyers would spend that much time on a spot credit. Where buyers spend a lot of time is when the standard hasn't yet had the opportunity to do their job because the project is in design or it's maybe pre-operations to some level of advancement. And there, I think it's important that buyers build a muscle to be able to evaluate risk of delivery so that we don't fall into the same pitfall that we have now, basically, where buyers bought from projects, the credits are not coming, and then they're like, well, you know, that hopefully they didn't put money up front, but sometimes they did, and even if they didn't put money up front, they still took a lot of time to due diligence projects, and nothing's coming afterwards. So I agree, like, it's annoying when people want to redo the work, but also like just telling your buyer, I'm going to use Puro probably is not enough because they're going to sign the contract way before Puro has had the opportunity to do a lot of work, or CSI. So we need we need them to have at least access to services to be able to due diligence projects before they're certified. I think this is not something we can completely outsource today.
That's interesting. This is a challenge for the near future for projects.
And if we, I was just crunching data from CDR FYI this morning, and there was 45 million tons of CDR have been sold in the market, right? And out of those 45 million, 30 million over the last 12 months. So the market, has gone up significantly. Biochar is maybe 10% of that, so it's not, the top one, but it's still a lot, right? When you compare that to spot credits, Kubi, you're saying 600,000. I don't have the number from Puro, but I think it's about the same. So let's call it 1 point something million in biochar. So only 1/45 of the market, has actually is able for ex post review. The rest of it is just people want to buy it. They have to do their work themselves.
So there is this space that we need to fill at some point, sooner, better. So let's stay there on the risk side, and I'm going to put the last question, keeping an eye on the timing. Buyers are looking for durable carbon removal. So let's open this window on permanence and durability of the credits. How well do they understand, buyers understand that biochar today, and what still needs to change in how biochar is positioned?
If we look at the broader CDR market, people have a choice between carbon that is mineralized in some form, whether it is into rocks underground, rocks overground, and carbon that is in, let's say, not mineralized form or less stable form. The permanence aspect, I think, was a big debate maybe last year, 2 years ago. And this has to be taken in the context of CRCF and others starting to try to distinguish between permanence and make decisions based on that. And then the market kind of aligned onto the several centuries definition for CDR, which in my view puts this debate a bit behind us until it comes again. But right now it's a bit behind us. I don't think pushing biochar to the same permanence as underground mineralized carbon is very wise, because it's just we don't have an all oil industries that's been doing that or things like that, However, continuing the research to get better and better at assessing permanence and progressively evolving standards as new science is built is of course what we want. At Puro, we have decay models based on standard regressions of historical observations, and then we start to allow also other demonstrations. The decay equations will still be what we use for our math, but we welcome projects to also feed us with a lot more analysis, so we can build our own opinion on things, so that we can move our methodology. It's revised every 2 years, basically. But I don't think in the market right now there is, I don't think claiming 1,000 year for biochar right now is going to drastically change the demand for it. I think it's already fits in a very nice place, which is cheaper than the rest, but with demonstrated high permanence.
Thank you so much. Being conservative and science-rooted is always a good approach. So to close our discussion, I'd like to ask to all of you, from your perspective, what has most changed in the last few years that makes large-scale biochar deployment in Africa credible today? And how are your companies engaging, and standards and tools you are developing, engaging with these very different pathways, artisanal and industrial or semi-industrial?
I can start maybe with like a small insight on that. What we've seen changing recently is basically that the first project, which started a few years ago, paved the way for the new one coming up. Basically, what we are seeing on the market is a big acceleration across all the continent. Projects are trying to find funding, and the issue was raised at the beginning of the panel. And so basically, we are seeing a lot of projects across the whole continent trying to be built first. So it can all this is allowed by having first successful projects working. First, it was local. We are getting the first industrial, bigger scale project. And so what is changing is the acceleration. And with the standardization and the proof that it works actually, and that it works inside communities with biochar, and with the community model well working, I think there is really a growing market for biochar production that is rising, and it's really great, and it's a good step forward for biochar industry in Africa.
Thank you, Mathias. Kubi?
I changed the answer a little bit. When I look around, I see what we all have in common, and that's we are preparing somehow the future for next generation. But let me ask a different question first. We all have invested something. May I ask who owns a carbon credit here? One? Perfect. I buy carbon credits myself every month. Speak to producers, no matter corks, VCUs, sinks, call them whatever you like. This is an asset that is traded. Who says it will not appreciate? I recommend buy some, get involved. I'm a pragmatic person who does things, so that's my way of supporting, and I'm sure today not a lot of people talk about it. It's a good time to get involved.
Yes, good suggestion. Thank you, Kubi. Julien.
So what has changed the last few years, right? Yeah. So, well, in biochar, number of buyers, over 450 buyers. I'm pretty sure 3 years ago this was under 100. Number of issued credits, I think we're doing 1.5 times incremental production every year. Very broad recognition, as in you'll have. I was on the call with a big American bank last Friday, who is desperate to find a biochar project in the US. So sorry, but still, this is like they're like, yeah, well, we've been talking about it for 2 years. We just where is the bankable project that needs big money that we can invest in? So recognition across banks really, I think, is a big one. And then since we're talking about a very specific continent with specific players and supply chains in agricultural products, I think insetting also is something that is coming up. You have a lot of the European and American corporates that have supply chains in Africa, and they could buy third-party credits, or they could buy credits or support initiatives that do CDR in their own supply chain. And I think this recognition is coming also when we talk to agricultural product trader. They start to look into this. There is pilots that you can find in East Africa, in Brazil, in coffee, and other things that are led by big agro traders with a lot of money. And I think this is coming, and this is probably going to be also lifting up the market quite a bit.
Thank you. Insetting is the key word. Simon, Innocent, do you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you very much. What has changed is that farmers have started to realize that biochar is the way to go. And like in the past where you could talk to a farmer about biochar and could not realize its importance. And I think from what the panelists have said, we have realized that some companies are now have come up to support the insetting side of it, but also we still have access to offsetting side where companies can even give support, because there is a great shift in use of synthetic fertilizers and exhaustion of our soils in Africa. So we need a remedy for this, and because we have realized high costs of inputs, I think biochar is a way to go and can serve multiple purposes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Simon,
I also
1
have a
minute.
small point. Yes. So far, we've been financing the early phases of the biochar projects through grants. And grants are a way to go forward, but what we are seeing is that there are new and different and innovative types of finance, like soft loans, forgivable loans, other structures that could help us bridge that first gap or connect the finance to the later production and then sale of carbon credits. So more of these types are definitely needed for us to also continue exploring and continue scaling. And that's where we are currently very much on the lookout to see how we can continue financing the operations.
Thank you. Good point, financing. So, thank you very much. Before closing, I would like to warmly thank each of you for your time, your openness, and the quality of the exchange. Thank you so much. I want also to acknowledge the support of the technical staff here at Bio360, and to thank everyone who joined us here in person and virtually for your attention and engagement. The panelists will be around, so if you have some questions or follow up for them, I'm sure they will be happy to engage with you, and me too. And I encourage you to continue this conversation through the event, connect with one another, and make the most of the opportunities Bio360 offers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
I'm the next.
Yeah. The next one.